Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Climate Live K12 session for students, educators, and the public. This is a video series that's brought to you by the Columbia Climate School. My name is Laurel Zamashihi, and I will be facilitating the session today. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Columbia Climate School or are just joining us for the first time, the Columbia Climate School is a newly established school at Columbia University for transdisciplinary climate research. The school marshals the university's strengths in basic and applied disciplines and expands its resources to understand climate and its impact on society, develop and inspire knowledge-based solutions, and educate future leaders for just and prosperous societies on a healthy planet. The Columbia Climate School is the first new school at Columbia in over 25 years, so we're extremely excited about its launch. By incorporating more than 20 different centers and over 750 people who collaborate among many departments at the university, we're better able to amplify, connect, and advance new areas of climate inquiry, research, and impact across Columbia and beyond. What we're hoping to do with these Climate Lab K12 sessions is to introduce you all to the interdisciplinary work through our scientific experts. These monthly sessions will run through the academic year, so the entire year from September to June. If you'd like any more information about the sessions, you can visit our website, and I'll put that in the chat, or you can contact us directly, and I'll put my email in the chat as well. Each week we focus on a different topic, and it is catered toward a specific age range. So for today's session entitled Coral Reef Conservation, a high school sophomore's view of coral reef conservation and restoration, we're going to hear from Kush Gulati, who is a high school participant in the Columbia Climate School pre-college program, about his unique journey that has inspired him to protect the underwater world. While coral reefs only cover about 1% of the ocean floor, they support an estimated 25% of all known marine species. Coral reefs are critically important for a healthy and functioning ocean that provides us with an endless amount of resources and ecosystem services. So in this session, we're going to explore some of the challenges that coral reefs face in the face of climate change, but we're also going to better understand the research that's being conducted that will provide solutions to restore coral reefs and build their resilience. So there will be time at the end of this session for you to ask Kush questions directly. Please use the Q&A box as the chat is disabled, so you can ask him questions. Anytime a question pops into your head, go ahead and populate it in the Q&A box, and we'll have time for it at the end. This session is being recorded, and we will post it on our website, and it will be on our YouTube as well. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Kush to hear more about his work.
Hello, everyone. My presentation is a sophomore's view of coral reef conservation and restoration by me, Kush Gulati. I would like to introduce myself as I am a sophomore at Newsom High in Tampa. I am passionate about the outdoors and nature, and I'm also a certified advanced scuba diver, and I'm also a PADI-aware coral reef conservation certified. I have conducted several research projects. My most impactful project was about studying the potential of natural substances to neutralize pollutants in ocean water. As you can see, I have received several awards recognizing my work, and in fact, I have even become one of the 300 broadcasters in 2021. To the right, you can see a photo of me, and this photo was taken on Earth Day of 2023 as we were on our way to Sombrero Reef in the Florida Keys. Reefs. So this is about the importance of coral reefs, and reefs feed and support over 500 million people. They shield the shores from erosion and storms by weakening waves by about 97% and cushioning land from all the impacts of hurricanes that make their way towards Florida and other vulnerable land. They are also remove about 70 to 90 million tons of CO2, and they are also used to help find drugs and medication to help fight diseases like cancer, arthritis, and infections. Coral tourism is worth about $1.1 billion or the Florida Reefs, and it gives jobs to 71,000 people in Florida. Corals are marine invertebrates and build their foundation on coral reef ecosystems by forming colonies. These are comprised of small polyps that secrete calcium carbonate, constructing the reef structure. These organisms engage in a mutually beneficial relationship with algae, and they receive nutrients through photosynthesis, coral reefs, and have amazing biodiversity and serve vital ecological roles, yet they face peril from climate change, pollution, and overfishing. Conservation endeavors, including coral reef restoration, are imperative for preserving these ecosystems and their diverse life that they sustain. As you can see in the image, it labels the algae, the nematocysts, the mouth, the tentacles, the polyps, and the corallite. And as you can see on the bottom is the calcium carbonate skeleton. Oil spills from shipping accidents, offshore drilling, or illegal dumping can coat corals with a layer of oil, suffocating them and preventing oxygen and sunlight from reaching the coral tissues. Oil can also contain toxic compounds that are harmful to corals and other marine organisms. Plastic pollution, including microplastics especially, can accumulate on coral reefs. These can pose a threat to marine life. Corals can become entangled in plastic debris, leading to physical damage, and may also ingest microplastics. These can cause digestive issues and impair their health in the long term. Pesticides, heavy metals, petroleum products, and other chemical pollutants can poison these corals, impairing their physiological processes and weakening their immune system. These contaminants can also disrupt the symbiotic relationship between corals and algae. These can lead to coral bleaching and increased susceptibility to disease. Now, this is a slide all about coral bleaching, and this is all about the causes of coral bleaching, which include temperature, subaerial exposure, and sedimentation, along with many other causes that may cause corals to bleach. The most important event that caused a coral bleaching was in the summer 2023. As you may know, the summer of 2023 was a record-setting year for how hot the oceans became in the Gulf of Mexico. These set off an all-hands-on-deck operation to save coral reefs in all major coral reef conservation agencies around the world. These coral reefs tend to turn white due to their loss of zooxanthellae. The zooxanthellae are basically embedded into a coral, and they help provide the coral with the food it needs through photosynthesis, and the coral also provides a home for the zooxanthellae, as it provides protection and feeds it and provides it with whatever it needs. Microfragmentation is an example of asexual reproduction. The idea behind microfragmentation is that you can cut large coral into smaller fragments. These then grow and mature. As you can see, me in the photo fragmenting and placing a coral onto the netting, and this is a low and cost-effective technique that can be used around the world to help recoup the lost corals due to coral bleaching or disease or in any other way. Coral fragments only require 2 to 3 years to reach maturity, compared to the 25 to 75 years it would take regularly to recoup the lost corals. Coral outplanting is the process of planting coral on substrate at a site where coral has been degraded in an effort to rejuvenate marine life. Once a site for outplanting is found, you can begin to collect the fragments from coral trees. To outplant, once at the site, you can use a vern, nail, or epoxy to place the coral onto the substrate. The wave test can be used to test if a coral can withstand storms and currents. After that, maintenance is required to ensure the coral's stability and success. If a coral is not properly maintained, it may result in the coral being um, either bleached, killed, or making it more susceptible for disease. Several techniques are being used by various coral reef conservation agencies. For example, the Vern technique, as you can see in the photo at the right, shows how coral reefs are being grown in a tree-type fashion. Corals are strapped onto the branches of the tree and are set to grow in a controlled environment, whereas in a regular environment, it would not grow as fast and would take 25 to 75 years to fully mature. Epoxy outplanting is where you use epoxy to stick the coral fragmentation onto the benthic surface in the hopes that it will grow in a specific fashion where it turns into a tree, not into a tree, but in the shape of a tree, and not into the pieces where you see here, which can't be epoxied and don't grow in the fashion that we like. Outplanting with nails is used by Moat Marine Lab, and it is used to help basically secure the coral to the benthic surface to help. Um, this is an easy way to grow corals, as you can put the corals, connect the corals to the nails previously, and then just outplant them later on. And it's pretty simple. All you need is a hammer and the coral connected to the nail. And that is the coral connected to the nail. Most algae are photosynthetic, just like terrestrial plants, and algae blooms could also be harmful to marine life. Algae is one of the main reasons why we need to clean the coral trees and recently outplanted coral. In the image to the right, I'm cleaning a recently outplanted coral to make sure there is no algae in or around the coral that was outplanted at Sombrero Reef. Red algae, known as red tide here in Florida, is one of the more notable ones, as when red algae blooms, it results in a coughing and throat irritation. One of the most common types of algae include the green algae, as it is very harmful to corals, and it may result in a large coral invasion and we can't save the coral from it quick enough, as it is a fast-growing algae. The causes of many of these algae to get into the water is through fertilizer runoff, rainwater overflow, and this happens especially in Florida because of Lake Okeechobee, as there's a lot of agriculture in Central Florida, and the fertilizer that runs off from the farms and makes its way to Lake Okeechobee, which then sometimes may overflow into the ocean, resulting in the algae being released into the ocean and entering into coral reef ecosystems. Ship traffic is also a cause of transfer of algae from place to place. This may happen when algae is stuck onto the hull of a ship and is brought overseas to another area, especially in Miami, where coral reefs are, and may result in harming the coral reefs, and could also happen through fishing gear and scuba gear, as if you don't wash your scuba gear once out of the water, it may have algae stuck onto it, resulting in a negative impact on the environment when going to the next site, as you may bring algae to the next site. King crabs are the allies of corals. This is because in the 1980s, an unknown pathogen wiped out a long-spined sea urchin in the Caribbean. The king crabs are used to eat a lot of harmful algae, while we kept increasing the amount of fertilizer runoff into the ocean water in the coastal waters. Most of these algae were very nutrient rich and found their way into coral reef ecosystems and resulted in the harming of many coral reef ecosystems in southern Florida. The solution is the king crabs, as they consume enormous amounts of seaweed and they reproduce copiously. Unlikely that they have any grave unintended consequences for the ecosystem, and scientists are in the process of building a crab army so that they can be implemented across southern Florida to help save the coral reefs. Some coral reef organizations in the US include Reef Renewal USA, Mote Marine Laboratory, and the Coral Restoration Foundation. I personally have worked with all three of these organizations as they are very prominent in the field of coral reef restoration. Reef Renewal USA is largely based in Florida, and the organization's main focus is to increase survival rates of outplanted coral and reef and emphasizes community engagement. Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium is renowned for its scientific research and conservation initiatives aimed at protecting marine ecosystems, including coral reefs. Mote's coral restoration program integrates current cutting-edge technology and research with hands-on restoration efforts. These scientists that conduct these research also investigate coral biology and genetics and learn more about the resilience to better understand the factors influencing coral health and survival. Mote also operates coral nurseries and conducts large-scale outplanting projects, collaborating with partners to restore reefs affected by climate change, disease, and other stressors. CRF, or the Coral Restoration Foundation, is a pioneering organization as it was one of the first restoration foundations in the world, and it's dedicated solely to the coral restoration efforts in Florida and beyond. They have established one of the largest coral nurseries in the world, producing tens of thousands of corals annually for reef restoration products. CRF utilizes a network of volunteers, scientists, and partners in their research. Through their comprehensive approach, CRF aims to rebuild resilient coral populations and enhance reef resilience. It is essential to create a sense of duty for coral reef restoration and protection by engaging in and educating the community. Community events and meetings offer chances for people to learn more about coral reefs and how to help more. Coral protection programs in schools are important to give the young generation the awareness of coral reef damage. This can be done by changing the syllabus, which you can basically do by going to, this is harder done than said in high schools, as curriculums are usually set by state standards or national standards. But in elementary and middle school, since the curriculum is more flexible, you can approach the teachers, ask them if they want to do a presentation, or provide them with material that they can use to learn more and teach about the coral restoration efforts around the world and in Florida. Forming a club is most commonly done in high schools, as certain students with a background in coral restoration and marine science may want to widen their basically ambition and help create awareness for the current coral bleaching events and CO2 emissions and everything around environmental science and marine science. And public awareness can be done through social media or other ways, as social media is a great way to get huge amounts of people to support you and basically help you build a foundation on where you can express your ideas, fundraise, or basically just create awareness. Flexible volunteer opportunities from organizations like Mote, CRF, and Reef Renewal are available, and this can suit the preferences of different individual people based on their own lives and their own availabilities. And getting involved is easy as just going to their local dive shop if they're living near the ocean, or went on vacation if you approach a dive shop in the Caribbean. They're very likely to have connections with coral reef organizations and can provide you the information you need to help support the major global effort in the coral reef restoration. These are my references, and I have several references, but these are a few that I listed as they helped me create a um, background, as they helped me create my presentation. Um, the most crucial ones were from UN, scuba.com, and The Impact of Livestock Farming on Climate Change, Environmental Science by David Garcia, the book.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kush, for sharing your coral and ocean conservation journey with us, as well as giving us a wealth of knowledge about some of the challenges that corals face, as well as the solutions that you're working on with various groups. We have quite a bit, a lot of questions here in the chat. So I'm going to start sharing them out and having you answer them. So Joe asks, when you developed your interest in diving and coral?
I developed my interest as a young 11-year-old when I just started diving, and when I was actually on a trip in the Keys to a local reef site where I was just diving for fun. I noticed a boat heading out from the dock, and I asked the captain of my boat what that boat was doing, as it had the Reef Renew logo on it. So I asked them about it, and they told me all about the restoration effort locally. And after researching, I learned a bit more and received a background, and found it to be an amazing thing to be a part of.
That's amazing. 11 years old, and you kind of took the initiative to start volunteering with this organization. And you're a sophomore in high school and you're doing all this incredible work and research. It's just really inspiring. Um, so someone else asked, are the coral pieces that are grown in the coral nurseries genetically modified to make them more resilient to the macroalgae overgrowth? And if not, how long do they live once they're in the water?
Um, these aren't like genetically modified, so to say. They may be, through sexual reproduction, may receive favorable traits like more resilience or faster growing. Um, but they usually stay in the water if overrun by algae for just a few weeks, depending on which type of algae. For green algae, which I mentioned, which is one of the more dangerous ones, it can take up to 2 weeks. But for other algae like brown algae, it may take longer, like month to 2 months to be overrun.
Yeah, like from my volunteer work, it also seemed like they were trying to outplant and grow corals that were some of the more resilient species. So perhaps, and unfortunately, historically the Florida Keys had a lot of staghorn coral, elkhorn coral, way back when our water quality was a little cleaner. That was pretty much what our coral reef was made of, or the majority of it. But those are very sensitive species. So what they were saying was they were kind of pushing more towards boulder corals that have a little bit more resilience. And I know there are some scientists that are kind of testing ways to use more resilient zooxanthellae that aren't as susceptible as being bleached under unfavorable water conditions. Um, so that's kind of an exciting new emerging area of research.
Mhm.
Um, Someone else said, how quickly can coral bleaching and other factors that harm coral reefs affect the entire coral colony?
The bleaching would essentially affect each coral individually, as each coral has different attributes and different characteristics that may make it less resilient or less able to defeat the, or not, each coral gets to choose when it releases its zooxanthellae as Um, it is a burden for the coral to keep it safe, and when in distress, it releases it so that it can maintain its own self and keep itself alive, which bleached corals are still alive and can be saved. It's just they are in distress, in extreme distress, and need um, help and basically need to regain that zooxanthellae, or they will no longer be able to provide for themselves and die.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Kush. It really depends on the species and resilience and what the other factors are. You mentioned that there's a ton of threats that are facing corals, right? It's not just warming temperatures, but it's ocean acidity. It's localized water quality pollution and like water quality challenges. It could be poor tourism practices. It could be viruses. So if all of those are compounding, the bleaching could happen quickly. um, some sources that I had found says just the rise of 1 degree Celsius for only 4 weeks can trigger a bleaching event. So it can happen very fast in the more sensitive species. Someone asked what your favorite sea creature was.
Um, I guess my fish could be something like a starfish, as starfish are, um, pretty mellow and they go with the flow and they can always recover from injuries. So I like that attribute about them, how they are flexible and just amazing.
Oh, I love that. Um, No one asked me, but my favorite sea creature is a shark. Okay, so we have another question that says, what activities and opportunities do you recommend for those who live in cities and maybe folks that don't live right on the coastline? How can they do outreach in their community about corals?
Um, like I mentioned earlier, you can basically go to middle schools or elementary schools to teach about and learn more about coral reef conservation efforts and just coral reefs in general, and basically approach the schools, provide them with materials, things to teach, and offer to do a presentation. Or basically, you can also use social media to help fundraise for these organizations, and also when limit your CO2 footprint, and uh, basically just help create a positive environment for creatures on land, as well as that will most likely also benefit the sea.
Yeah, I love what you just said, Kush, that helping out your local ecosystem has a lot of ripple effects that can help out our like the environment as a whole. So I think acting locally can have a huge impact in encouraging young people to do that is very empowering. One other thing that I'll mention is I used to live in Florida. I live in New York City now as I work at Columbia. But when I was going back to visit home, Kush recommended that I reach out to some of these organizations that he has volunteered with. So I spent a portion of my time when I was going back to visit, volunteering with some of these groups. And I think if you want to do something tangible, taking a chunk out of your vacation to volunteer locally, I think is really helpful as well. I mean, you saw some of the work that Kush is doing in terms of um, scraping off like algae or doing outplanting or I don't know, cleaning platforms for corals to grow on. All that it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of people to help out. So if you are interested in those opportunities, I think there's a lot of organizations to reach out to. Okay, let's see. What else do we have here? Which of the upcoming solutions do you think is the most commonly used or one that should be implemented more?
Um, I think as in I guess the community would basically be, I guess, to even join a Facebook group or an online group, or to basically connect with these organizations as like Reef Renewal, Coral Restoration Foundation, and MOAT, and especially MOAT since they offer the most remote opportunities for basically volunteering, as you can volunteer to help with several things like um, basically planning events and other things that they might have needs for at that time as their needs change so often. Um, I guess community wise, you should be able to join in your school a club or a class like marine science class or environmental science class where you can express your interests and ideas and learn more about the subject itself.
That's really important. And I'll also just share, we talked just because Kush lives in Florida and that was the primary focus of this chat. Florida coral is facing a lot of stressors, and I think by helping reduce some of those externalities that corals face, it can help them build resilience against, let's say, like a bigger global challenge like climate. So, what Kush is saying about doing things locally to help mitigate climate change, very important. But if you're thinking locally in Florida, water quality is a really big issue. If we continue to have challenged water quality in the area, the corals, even even if, we didn't have an incredibly large bleaching event in summer 2023, the corals are still facing a lot of challenges due to the poor water quality that can cause like algae overgrowth or disease to be spread through the area. So I think just really hitting home on helping out on some of those like local pollution challenges is important as well. Um, we have someone that says, I think we kind of mentioned a few things, but what communities, what would you recommend what communities do you recommend for those who would like to be actively involved in climate programs? So, Kush had mentioned a few in this presentation. I'll also mention at the Columbia Climate School, we have opportunities for young people to be a part of a pre-college program. That's actually how Kush and I got connected with each other is through the Columbia Climate School in the Green Mountains program. It's a 2-week program held in Vermont where we kind of talk about a variety of different um, intersections of climate in different sectors. But one of the most powerful components of the program is to have students create their own climate action plan. So Kush did his climate action plan around corals and ocean conservation, but it's really up to the student and their own interests and passions. So if you're interested in that opportunity, I would encourage you to check it out. Applications are rolling, but our scholarship deadline is March 15th, just to keep in mind. Just because we're a little bit over on time, I want to give a shout out that Lisa said Reef Keeper Belize is also doing marine education about coral reefs in Belize. So if you check out their website, it sounds like they have some resources that you might be able to implement in your own classroom or read about if you're a student. So feel free to check those out. Kush, we do have a question asking if you would be willing to share your charts with us. Um, I don't I don't know how we would be able to do
Yeah, I can
that.
definitely
Go ahead, go ahead.
I know this is going to be posted online in the YouTube for Climate K12. I can share a link to this presentation in the comment section so that you can access it if you want to see the charts.
I was also going to mention that if you reach out to me, and I'm going to put my email in the chat, um, and for those who are watching the recording, it's LZ as in zebra, AIM as in Mary A at climate.columbia.edu. If you reach out to me, I can put you in contact with Kush, and he might be able to share those charts and a PDF of his presentation with you all. All right. Our last question, and this is kind of a loaded question, Kush, so I think I would love to hear your thoughts on this, is how long is it going to take to restore the coral reef?
Um, For now, it's very uncertain how long it'll take as the events as we saw in the summer of 2023, like the extreme heat wave, um, have set us back a few years actually in the coral restoration efforts. And as these events are unpredictable, um, we are unsure how long it will take, but progress is being made as we have restored around 1% of the world's coral reefs that have been degraded. And we are expanding these efforts and giving and reaching out to communities around the world. And as government action continues to play a role in the effectiveness of these nonprofits, we may be able to um, cope with the coral reef degradation by around 2050 if done correctly and effectively.
Beautifully said. I think the future of coral reefs is similar to, you know, the future of our world in the face of some of the environmental and climate challenges that we face. It's really in our hands, right? So um, it's not written yet. There's a lot of work to be done on the ground, and I think it starts with us. Kush, thank you so much for spending the past 30 plus minutes with us. This was incredible. Thank you for everyone for attending, and we hope to see you next month at our next Climate Live K12 session.